All right. I believe we are live. Let us know in the chat. I see so many of you here already. Let us know in the chat if we are live and if we are looking good and sounding good, because we want to come through so clear for you tonight, because this is a really, really exciting night for us here at the channel and for all of us assembled. We had this weird idea. We were talking to Christopher one night about his own series. And this was one of the series that really inspired a little whippersnapper young Christopher Ruocchio to want to be a writer. And it informed so much of what he has created. And we were like, hey, why don't we get together and we'll all read it? And you can kind of guide us through, because this kind of has the rep for being somewhat confusing or somewhat hard to get through. So this is amazing that we all get to be together and have a Sherpa like Christopher Ruocchio lead us up the mountain that Gene Wolfe built with Shadow, the book of the new sun. I'm just going to go around and introduce everybody very quickly, and then we're going to kind of go one by one and say what our initial thoughts were of the book. And thank you, each and every one of you, for joining us here in chat. We will say hello to some of you quickly as possibly we can, but we don't want to take too much time away from the discussion. So we're going to get right into it. Jacob, right there onto my side, my literary wingman, tell me everything you thought about Book of the New Sun.
Oh, man. The better question is, what did I think about Book of the New Sun? Because every thought that I have about this book has to be rationalized with, do I have this thought about this book? What did I read? I'm not totally sure. I mean, I can see why Christopher Ruocchio, I'm going to talk about you like you're not here. I can see why you were so inspired by this book, because I'm the one thing that I took away that was absolutely brilliant was the atmosphere, first of all. I mean, the world building alone is a masterclass that anybody that is interested in writing should take a look at and find plenty of things to steal, and do not apologize about it. Not that you stole things, Christopher Ruocchio.
You know what? There's no stealing. It's
he liberated them.
Everybody steals. It's okay.
Liberated. That's a great artistic word. So you're going to go into the confused camp. Are you putting yourself?
Oh, heavily. If there's a scale, I'm all the way over.
So base camp, before we head up with our Sherpa, you're in the confused tent.
I'm here to learn what I just read, basically.
Okay. Fair, because you and me have sleeping bags right next to each other. We are in the confused tent at base camp. Preacher Reads, all of your thoughts, my friend.
All of my thoughts. All right. No.
For Shadow of the Torture.
I am very excited to continue. I think giving it a rating at this point would be impossible, because I could see this being one of my favorite reads of all time, depending on where it goes. And I could also see this being extremely frustrating, depending on where it goes. And so I'm going to say I was very happy with the first quarter. I think the thing that stuck out to me the most is that he is as purposeful as I have ever read of an author. Like, you can tell everything he does is on purpose. He's confusing when he's supposed to be. He is clear when he's supposed to be. Every moment felt like, I mean, every sentence felt like it was almost word for word chosen so meticulously. And that is really interesting as an experience. I don't know if I liked it, but it was an amazing artistic experience to enjoy, to take in.
Okay. So do you feel like you're in the confused tent with me and Jacob?
I know what is happening.
Okay. So there's a tent next to us, and it's got a little sign over the door that says, I know what's happening at base camp.
Where I am firmly confused is why he's doing the things he's doing. So I'm like, I'm back and forth on like, hey, like, what was his reasoning for doing X, Y, and Z? I know what X, Y, and Z are. What Gene's doing, no one. Okay.
I think I might be in the tent with Preacher. That's a much more accurate way to describe it.
Yeah, that does kind of. I'm not even going to go 100% what. I know a lot of what, but not all the what. Okay, I'm skipping Christopher Ruocchio because he's out there sharpening his stick that he's going to walk with up the mountain and guide us all. So I'm going straight to Sam. Sam, now this is one of your faves. You've read this more than once.
Yeah.
So where are you at? Where are you at base camp?
Yeah. So this is where this being my third read through, this is where I owe Christopher both thanks and an apology. Thanks because about 2.5 years ago, it was either between reading this or Black Company, and just hearing him talk about this, I was like, I'm going to try that. And an apology, because I was 100 pages into Empire of Silence, had some really rough life circumstances, and stopped reading it, put it down, read Book of the New Sun from cover to cover, and then read the rest of Empire of Silence. So I think my first reading of Christopher's first book suffered because I was just imbibing Gene Wolfe. One could say consuming him, but we'll get to that more in later books. During my first read. So anyway, yeah, this it's Lord of the Rings, and then this for me. And the more I read this, the more it's a tough battle. So I think I can say pretty easily this is my least favorite of the series, and not because I don't love it, because this is a 5 out of 5 stars for me. But yeah, I think it gets both clearer and more confusing in some pretty critical ways as it goes on. But in terms of like where the story goes from here, like buckle up. Like this is the boring one. So 5 stars.
Okay.
But
I'm both excited and scared.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put a new tent at base camp, and Sam is like, I could have led you up this mountain, but no one paid me to do it. So Sam's firmly in that tent. I'm coming to you, Jake, at Nerd Level Rising. What tent are you comfortable in before we start heading up?
Oh man, I feel like I'm. So, as I was reading this, right, I was like, I feel like I'm following this really well, right? Like I'm like, what is, like, obviously I don't understand every single thing, but I'm like, okay, this isn't as bad as people said. And then I watched you guys' review, and you talk about somebody's a robot, and I was like, what? So there's certainly stuff that I was like, okay, I'm definitely missing some things that I don't even realize I'm missing, but that's okay. But overall, I would say I feel pretty good about it. So I'm not too far down on the confused spectrum, I suppose.
Okay. So I look pretty good. That's a whole different
good.
tent.
Pretty
I
good.
think
Yeah,
that's
it
a
was.
whole different tent. Okay.
Yeah, I
It's
think
not bad.
certainly some of the symbolism's lost on me. Like I know people always talk about like all the Catholic symbolism and stuff that I just am not educated on. So a lot of that, or all of it, frankly, I missed. But
That and the robot.
Yeah, that and the robot.
Yeah, robots and religion. They're not going to land for you.
Hey,
I
that's
also
okay.
missed the robot. I
thought-
don't know what you.
Okay.
We'll get to it later.
I'm not alone.
I'm going to put a tent like right by the campfire next to SamWise that could have led us up the mountain, but no one paid him. And it's going to, I got most
There
of
you
it
go.
except robot and religions. And Jake
Fair
is
enough.
in there.
Fair
Okay.
enough. I will
Well-
just really quick before we move on. I do just
Absolutely.
want to say, as somebody who Sun Eater is up there, my favorite series of all time. Like to see the influence being carried
Yeah.
forward into those, like just as a fan, it was so fun to read and feel that as we go. And yeah, that was just, it just made the experience just that much better.
Well, thanks, man.
I am going to drop down to Richard and Austin from Two to Ramble from the bridge of the Enterprise D, I think, with those chairs.
Yeah, we're trying to embrace our new Starship era. And Rich, do you want to go first, or?
Sure.
Okay, good. Okay.
This book was I think the right term to put is I was the healthy amount of confused, just the right amount. Where pretty sure it's talked about like you're confused when you're supposed to be, and it's clear when it is supposed to be. But Gene Wolfe knows what he's doing, and I did feel that of. Like, of course, the plot itself, I understood it. I understood what was actually happening, but everything about the world was just a puzzle piece mystery of like, ooh, is that solar panels? Oh, apparently there was a robot that I missed. I think I know now that you say it. I'm like, oh, is that the robot? Well, that's beside the point.
We'll get to it, I bet. Yeah.
We'll get to it. But other than that, like, it's just one of the most intriguing books that I've read.
That is fair.
It begs you to ask for more. Like I'm definitely so excited to read the next book to just find out what the hell is going on with this world. And yeah, and then on top of that, the prose, absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Oh God, I definitely see the influence, Christopher. I see it, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, I got it. This is my new favorite book of all time. and it is also
What? Whoa.
it is also
Okay.
it's also my least favorite
Wow.
book of all time.
Cheater.
I don't
Nah.
throw things. Okay, I love this
What a
book.
cop out.
No, I love it. I hate it. I felt stupid. I thought I was connecting dots and feeling smart, and like Jake, I'm going, wait, that was a thing in the book. I went through such a roller coaster of emotions where the inciting incident happens, and I'm going, oh, unreliable narrator. Okay, I'm so in. Vorbis, or sorry, I'm saying it wrong. The V guy could be in his head. What's going on here? I was invested, and then I was thrown for loops. But the thing that bothered me the most, it was very derivative of Sun Eater. So I was a little bit.
That was so apparent.
It was apparent. And I was going, come on, what is this? Well, this stands. But my overall take is I am invested and confused. So I am in the confused tent, but I'm peeking my head out and going like, oh, I caught a thing. That's it. That's what I'm at.
I love it. I love it. Okay, Richard. I think you're kind of up in the tent with Jake. Like, you got what you felt you should have.
Yeah, the
We'll
right
see.
way is
Yeah.
how it was put is I understood what happened, I think. I don't understand why.
Okay.
A lot of why questions are happening, but
Yeah.
I at least understood what
Yeah.
happened. I
the
think.
first
To clarify my tent, I might peek my head out and realize I didn't understand anything. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think I know, but
It's
that's not a
possible.
guarantee.
Jake could pop his head out and see everyone else making s'mores and didn't
Uh-huh.
realize what. Yeah. I
Also-
had no idea about it. All
Also
right,
would like to
Johanna.
I would like to point
Oh,
out real
go ahead,
quickly,
Preacher.
I think this is the first time that me and Richard have ever been in the same tent on a book topic ever. So
Well, awesome.
we disagree
Progress.
all the time.
Awesome.
What, Preacher, do we
Okay.
agree sometimes we agree a little bit more?
Let me go back and watch that Name of the Wind video. It's almost-
And no, you don't.
I thought I was about to make a friend for a second.
Yeah,
No, you're
yeah,
not.
Let's get
sorry.
rid
we
of
love
that.
Red Rising.
Hey.
Okay, Johanna, take it away. How do you feel?
Okay, but before I say how I feel, I just want to say hi to everybody because I don't know. I've never met Jacob for once. Like this is the first
Hi,
time I've been in a
Johanna.
live chat with you. Hi, and I've never met Preacher Reads before
Hi,
or
Johanna.
Tutor Ramble. So hi
Great to meet
guys.
Hello.
I have I think been in a stream before with you, Christopher. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I checked in with everybody. Hi, I'm Johanna. If you guys don't know who I am,
Oh,
so I'm happy
you
to
are
be the like
the
one.
amazing, vivacious host from Johanna Reads, and everyone should know the assassin elf. Everyone.
Your one and only assassin elf here, and your one and only female reader here. So I'm excited
Yes.
to bring that perspective here. So as far as what I thought, Jake echoed my thoughts so well. Like even when Jake, Nerd Level Rising Jake here, when he talked about it in his weekly update the other day, I was like, that's exactly how I felt. I was wondering like, okay, what is there to miss? I feel like I followed everything. And then I watched your video, John, and you mentioned the robot, Jacob, you mentioned the robot. And I'm like, what? How did I miss that? Maybe I don't know what I read at all. And, but I will say, just echoing what Jake had said before too, I just love the prose. I find
His
it
prose is beautiful.
so evocative and so atmospheric
Yes.
to the point where it's been hard for me to read other books since finishing this one because it's made me realize how important atmosphere is to me as a reader.
Mhm.
So I love the tone of the style of the writing. And I come from a different direction. I haven't yet read Sun Eater, but I have good reason for this. I wanted to read this before Sun Eater, and I also wanted to read The Dying Earth by Jack Vance. So I could have my influences of Dying Earth literature in a row. And so that's the only reason, Christopher, but I've been recommended your series so many times. And I did read the first tale of Jack Vance's The Dying Earth last year, and I could certainly see the influence of Jack Vance in this story, especially with the way like one event kind of goes right into the next and there's almost like no build up, just things happening one after another. And I would also say, and I don't mean this as a criticism per se, but I would say that the characters are quite flat with the exception of Severian and maybe Thekla. I found most of the characters fairly flat in this story, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They're not as flat as Vance's characters, but that's something that I noted. And at the same time, I felt like it was similar to Jack Vance in the sense that it had this like strangely fantastical, dark, whimsical atmosphere, very imaginative. And at the same time, there's something just a little offbeat and a little
Yes.
eccentric in the writing. So yeah, that was how, so I'm coming from it from a different viewpoint, I think, than everybody else. So I'm excited that to be reading this with you all and to learn all the things that I missed. I did grow up Catholic, but I wasn't, and there were some parts that I maybe caught glimpses of that influence, but I am sure there's so much that I have yet to learn from you all.
Well, yeah, I think that's an amazing wrap up, and you do have the sole female perspective, so you get to pick whatever tint you want to go to, Johanna.
Thank you.
You have carte blanche. Okay, so bringing it home for us, the very erudite professor himself from the Best of Fantasy, Dr. Philip Chase. This is your second read through, you said.
Yeah.
How did it hit you the second time?
Well, first I want to acknowledge Paul Williams in the chat because he was one of my buddies the last time I read this, and he helped me understand a lot the first time through. We had some great conversations with him and Matt from Matt on Books, and ultimately Jared Henderson also joined us in our final chat on the series. So it's definitely a series that you learn a lot from each other when you're reading it through, and that's a great thing. That's one of my favorite things about reading and being here. And so I'm looking forward to learning from everybody for sure. I will say that you catch a lot more the second time. In fact, a lot of people said to me the first time I was reading it, it's like, you read Book of the New Sun the first time so you can actually understand it more the second time. It was kind of what a lot of people said, something along those lines. And I'm finding that to be somewhat the case. I'm sure I'm still missing a lot, but even the first time I read it, I felt like it had a lot in common with allegory, medieval allegory. There's a lot of typological type of stuff going on in here. And that helped me as a medievalist to kind of, I think, understand what maybe Gene Wolfe was doing in places, even if I didn't understand every single reference. It did help me to understand what he was basically trying to do. And I love some of the stuff he does just philosophically, thematically in here. One of my favorite things about it is how he plays with language. And I'm sure you all noticed there are a bunch of weird words in here, a bunch of old Latin words, dead words that he just throws in without any explanation whatsoever. And I know there's a whole dictionary you can buy to read along with this. So you can exactly, Jared. There's a whole dictionary you can buy and like an explanation, like a handbook, a Book of the New Sun handbook that you can buy to help explain all of this to you. If you
I bet
do all that. But I love what he does with his just this is not spoiler. I'm going to read 2 sentences from the end of the first chapter.
Absolutely.
No spoilers whatsoever. But he says here, and I think he's cluing you in here. He's telling you, here's why I'm playing around here with you guys. Here it is. We believe that we invent symbols. The truth is that they invent us. We are their creatures, shaped by their hard, defining edges. And that's true of language itself. Language is basically a bunch of symbols. And you can see it, I won't say anything further on it because it would be spoilery, but even in the way the characters dress, the way they behave, the way they're perceived by other people, it's largely because of symbols. And you'll see as we get further into the series how much more he does with language and language as a way of interpreting the world around us and how it influences the way we see the world around us. So that I think he's kind of cluing us in early on, like be on the lookout for this, right? Be on the lookout for the ways in which the characters' view of what is happening around them is informed by their language, by the symbols around them that surround them, and the way other people interpret them because of those symbols. So I'm enjoying it the second time more than I did the first. I had my struggles just like all of you, who are reading for the first time, for sure. Just kind of feeling like, all right, like Jake said, I thought I knew what was going on, but I was puzzled as to this seems very random. Why does this character suddenly appear back again in the story that we met earlier? Out of nowhere, it feels like we're almost on a stage, and then suddenly, a character's wheeled in out of like, wow, okay, out of left field, and then appearing again. But again, it really helps to read this on a typological level, on a symbolic level. on the level of like an allegory. So I hope that that's helpful because it's helping me to feel like grapple with it a little bit better this time around.
That was helpful, and I think that earned you both elbow patches with that. Just real quickly, I gotta say, Books with Blake, do it.
Do it.
Do it. Okay.
Do it.
You've heard us all. You've seen Base Camp. Christopher, you've looked around. You've seen all the tints. How are you feeling? What do you think? You take the floor, my friend. I will say go ahead. All you.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I didn't realize this was like the me show. So I didn't finish my homework, actually. I hadn't reread this. I got about 9. It dethroned Dune, which had been my favorite for most of my life, and it dethroned Dune so handily that it was almost embarrassing, actually. But I came to it actually rather late. It didn't inspire me to write Sun Eater. I read it as I was finishing book 1, and it
Really?
like, man, if I read it earlier, like, I wouldn't have tried. And so as I was revising, I'm like, well, I may as well just sort of like, this is my life now, I guess. Because a lot of like the sort of things that were similar were kind of already there. A lot of the language stuff, especially the Greek and the Latin. And I just sort of was able to crystallize what I was doing because I read this and sort of steered more into the skid of being a Gene Wolfe fan. And so it was rather a later influence. But as far as what everybody said, what Preacher was saying at the beginning is sort of, I think, what I try to tell everybody who's like nervous about reading the books, because they do have a reputation for being difficult and obscure and complicated. And this puts people off, right? On top of the usual, like, there are a lot of people who are afraid of science fiction because they think it's hard in a way that fantasy feels, I think, more familiar. Knights and castles are more comforting than aliens that I've never heard of before, or whatever. And then so a lot of my readers, I found, have been afraid of reading this series. And so I try to assure everyone that you will understand what is happening when you're reading books fine. What you won't understand is why. And that's okay, because neither does Severian, actually. And he kind of doesn't by the end completely either. And for a lot of the understanding, we need to really read Earth of the New Sun, which is book 5, and which was not supposed to be written at all. Gene Wolfe didn't want to write it because it sort of explained everything, and he felt it was sufficient to read the first 4 books, and that would be enough. But I do love Earth of the New Sun, and I look forward to going, hopefully, to book 5 as well. But yeah, so I'm not surprised by what anybody was saying, right? That this was like sort of surprising, or that they don't really get everything, but like everyone was following everything. So I don't know where you want to go from here precisely, John. But
well, I will just go first. Let me just thank Grifkin real quickly, and we know you like Nick here. I think wants to check in. We know your family was just grown here. Is everyone good? Everyone happy? Everyone doing great? I think was a question people.
Oh yeah, no.
Okay.
Everybody's good. New baby's almost 3 months old now, so things are starting to stabilize. Book 7 is not still done, so there's that. But everyone else is doing great. It's just me.
And that new baby probably has something to do about that.
Just a bit, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I will just say, look, going forward, I would just say that Dr. Chase kind of hit the nail on the head for me, because I just had a kind of an epiphany when you said it's somewhat like I would categorize this right up there with Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. It's like Severian moves through this world, and all of humanity just kind of passes in front of him back and forth and kind of circles back around sometimes. And it kind of gives me the same feeling of watching that show. So I thank you, Dr. Chase, for that. That actually kind of had things slot in. So I think what we're going to do right now is we're going to move on to kind of some spoilery talk. So if there's anyone here, and you probably not here if you haven't read the Book of the New Sun or book 1, Shadow of the Torturer yet. But if you are, we're going to get into some spoiler talk. So I think
John?
we're going to go. Yep. Yes, sir, Sam.
Yeah, can I butt in? Ooh.
Yeah, you can.
Sorry.
And then
No, you first, man. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just gonna say before we have the like spoiler talk and everyone who hasn't read it leaves, I want to address one thing that was said a couple of times, because this was something that kind of like put me off from reading this, at least when I was kind of debating it at first, which is like this series is very entertaining and a lot of fun, and you will get a lot out of it your first time reading it. There's like a lot of people who have an aversion to like the fantasy books where it's like, you got to read it twice, man. And like, you know, it's 17 books long and each book is 800 pages and you have to read it twice to fully understand it. Like, you'll get a lot more context as to why things are happening the second read through. Like this time reading it, like Christopher mentioned Earth of the New Sun. And like, there is a couple of very key details of things that happen near the end of Earth of the New Sun that Gene Wolfe mentions at the beginning of chapter 2, which I had never noticed. And like, this is the book that wasn't supposed to be written, supposedly, but he was planting seeds for it all the way. So it's things like that that make it a completely different read the second time around. There's still a plot to follow. There's still alien monsters to fight. There's still quirky characters that you'll meet. There's still weird, trippy adventures that Severian goes on, as well as a lot of things to like wrestle with and ponder with along with Severian as he deals with his own depravity and the depravity of the world around him. So it is a great time your first time through, at least I think, but you have to get to the end, and it's very different the second time around. So I just wanted to add a brief note on that in case anyone's put off by that.
Yeah, and I wanna say too, before we scare everybody away, right, with the word spoilers, right, that we should probably talk about what the books are superficially, right, before we even get there, right? Which like Johanna was saying, this is a dying Earth story, right? And for people unfamiliar with the, I hate the word subgenre, but the subgenre, these are science fiction stories that are set at sort of the end of Earth's life cycle as a planet, right? The sun in this story is going out, right? Other dying Earth stories, there's maybe a different problem, right? But it is so far in the future that the sun is dying, although there are reasons to think it's not so far as our understanding of astronomy would have that actually be. There's something's happened to the sun, and so it may be a little bit sooner, but it is at least a few billion years in the future. And humanity has had its galactic imperial phase. That phase is over. That time is done. Humanity is well in decline, and the former sort of emperor of the universe is now really the king of a part of South America. And it is not clear that it is South America. That it is South America, it sort of leaks through in little details about what they're eating and drinking, and some of the geography. The equator is clearly to the north. And there are pampas, so like we can tell we're in Argentina, right? But the main character is his name is Severian. He is a torturer. He's an apprentice torturer. Part of the sort of governmental structure, right? He is studying to hurt people for the government, not to extract information, but to exact punishment, right? Very crucially, they do not care what anybody says about anything. They're not interested in information. They are just prescribing punishments. And his story is about him leaving those circumstances and sort of wandering through this weird post historical time and maybe doing something about that sun situation. And he tells us in chapter 1 that he will eventually be the autarch, right? The emperor, the king. That's chapter 1, so I think we can say that much, right? And so it's how do we get there, and what does that mean, right? This is a very weird future, right? There are sort of Cthulhu creatures that live in the ocean that are at war with this kingdom particularly, but with humanity kind of in general. There are human factions allied with them. There are robots, there are aliens, there are sword fights and duels with weird flowers, and there are wizards whose powers are real, and there's all sorts of crazy stuff that we're getting into. this I can't remember who said this is the worst of the series, but it is like almost none of the things I think about when I think about Book of the New Sun are in book one. Almost none of them. Just every single book I think gets it's more fun and more interesting. I do have a soft spot for 3. I'll say that up front. But if you're afraid of reading it, just work through that. It is, in my opinion, it's not just my favorite series. I think there's a strong case to be made for it's being the best, right? Because I think was it Jake or was it Preacher who was saying every sentence in this book very clearly is intentional, and this is true in all of Wolfe's writing. Wolfe was an engineer. Sam's got the Pringles shirt. He helped make the machine that makes Pringles, right? Which is hilarious. But he writes like an engineer. Like there's my dad would always say, because my dad's also an engineer. I decided not to be one. That any idiot can build a bridge, right? But it takes an engineer to build one that can just barely stand, right? And it's not the Book of the New Sun just barely stands, but it has no extra parts, right? Which is what that means, right? It's so precise, right? Every bit of the story is so intensely hyperlinked with every other bit of the story that it is. It's just perfect. That doesn't mean it's easy or pleasant all the time, right? But because Severian is hard to like, he's he's got a little bit of Alex DeLarge in him, let's say. But it's never boring, at least to me. So I hope people who are on the fence will read it.
If I could chime in on the reading
Absolutely.
piece. There's a couple books recently that I have DNF'd in the last couple of years because they were just too, I guess esoteric might be a good word for it, but just not enough concrete plot to like hold on to. This did not feel like that at all. So don't like take our description to make it feel like this is just a fever dream the whole time, right? Like he fever dreams you plenty of times, but then he like sucks it back into a very straightforward concrete plot. That is made more confusing by his language choices, but again, that's on purpose. But man, this is like I struggled with the spear that cuts through water, just bounced off of it really hard. Just not for me, and this felt significantly more straightforward than a book like that. So I definitely would agree that it's not unreadable or like difficult to understand what is happening.
Yeah, I could barely put it down, to be honest. I was from word number 1, it just gripped me and I couldn't put it down. It was wild.
I would recommend read.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Austin. We'll come back to you, Sam.
I was just gonna say 2 seconds of I'd recommend ebook because it was so easy to look up definitions. There's a lot of words I didn't know, and then it was also good to know, is this a made up word or not? So if anybody's reading it, ebook helped me a lot of going, okay, that's not just I don't understand the word. That's a made up in universe term as well. Sorry, Sam, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say on what Jake said about like he couldn't put it down. Both times that I've gotten to Sword of the Lictor, book 3, I've read the whole thing in under 24 hours. Like all the books, but like especially that one is like it almost reads like a thriller. Wolfe has such great pacing in these.
Yeah. One thing that Austin just said that I definitely want to bring up once we move over is the question of is using a dictionary for this book on your e-reader. Is it complicated by what is told to us in the appendix? Because many of those words may not actually mean what we think they mean. I thought that was a very interesting thing to get after I was done, right, in the appendix, to be like, oh. And then how Gene obviously does that. So,
So does anybody else have...
go ahead, that's
Jake.
one thing I would caution too, is that there's someone in the comments I think mentioned there's a book called Lexicon Earthus by Michael Andre Driussi, which specifically is a dictionary for this series, right? That specifically defines the words as Wolfe is using them in context. Andre Driussi is like one of the great Wolfe scholars, and it's by no means is that necessary, right? Because in reading any book, right, like you encounter new words all the time, and it doesn't really matter that you don't know them, right? Because often context is sufficient. And so I would also maybe encourage people to just sort of sit with the experience unless you're really, really, really lost. Because a lot of this stuff will come clean, in time. So,
as a general question.
But I interrupted somebody. I'm sorry.
No,
you're fine.
Go ahead, Jake.
Did everybody read? I don't know if everyone has the same edition or not. The one I have at least had a forward. Is it Ada Palmer? How do you say their name?
Yeah.
Yes, I haven't read it because I usually find that forwards spoil things, so I still haven't read it yet.
I got
read
spoiled on
uh,
a forward. I got spoiled on a forward today
Yeah.
Dang. All right.
for the Running Man Stephen King. You're 100% correct.
Okay. Well, for what it's worth, for me at least, I found it particularly helpful because it was it just talked in generalities and about like maybe things to like there was a whole section on how Severian is such an unreliable narrator at times, and so it just gave me a little more context on like what things to focus more on than other things. So that might be helpful for some first time readers as well. It helped me at least.
Okay.
Well, now I feel like I want to read this book again because I did the audiobook and I feel like I'm missing a lot of stuff here. I didn't really get to.
No, the audio is
tap on the
great.
Kindle and
Great.
everything. Yeah, the narration was incredible. The voice for Severian was so perfect. I highly recommend
great.
it for the atmosphere, but to be able to like look up words and stuff, it was a little difficult.
Yeah, I actually did both. So I alternated between audio and then just ebook and physical. I did all three. My wallet does not appreciate how I buy books.
You immersive consumed. You kept in it.
But no, the atmosphere alone for the audiobook is definitely incredibly well done. I think worth it for that alone. Of it makes the like, yes, these characters are human, but with the tone and how this book is written, Severian doesn't feel like us. Doesn't feel like you. Most of these characters. And to respond to you, Johanna, like talk about like the flat nature of the characters. To some degree, I agree. But what twisted it a little bit more for me is I'm looking at these characters not necessarily as flat, but not quite right. Like all of them have the same feel that they're not exactly like us. They're different humans at this point. They don't experience emotions necessarily the exact same way that we would see it, or at the very least, how Severian like presents it is odd. Like I think the best example that I saw from this book is Severian's view on the emotions of love is not quite right, or at least not how we would consider it now. So it's just something interesting to explore and see how he feels about these things.
Yeah, there's an interesting line. He says something like, "All love that which they destroy," or something along those lines. That's a good point. And I feel like it's worth mentioning this too, just because I did see a comment about it, I think, on your channel, John, especially as a female reader. Severian, probably because we're seeing this through Severian's perspective, there is a very strong male gaze towards the female characters in this story. So I understand that can be very, very off-putting, especially for female readers. I did try to take into account the lens through which we're seeing this story unfold. So I don't know. I feel like that's worth pointing out, however, and I'm sure that'll evolve as it goes on. That's a really good point, though, Richard, about the characters being kind of different in the story. I think that's kind of what added to what I was talking about when I said there's something like a little offbeat or eccentric in the storytelling, and certainly the characters do seem different than we are, and I do wonder how much the future aspect plays a role in that as well.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Like humanity is very different, pushed towards this ending of humanity. Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Does anybody else have anything before we move on to some spoilery things? Okay.
I have
go
a question
ahead.
for those that have read the story before. Christopher, Sam, and Philip, and I think that was everybody that's read it before. Would you recommend just blazing straight into Claw of the Conciliator, like right after? Because I got to the end of the story and I was like, I have so many questions that I need answered immediately, and I feel like I should have treated these first two books as one book.
Well, I hope one of those questions isn't what happened at the Piteous Gate, because you won't get an answer. There's a skip, but but you should totally keep reading because Claw is amazing, and Daylight is wasting. So
That was my. I was like, when's the
my
next
answer.
book for the read along? Yeah.
We'll set everything up. Okay, so I think let's go. If we're gonna get into spoilers, I kind of want to take this book in this first one, Shadow of the Torture, in thirds, because I felt for me it broke into like 3 acts. The
Fair.
beginning,
For me too. Mhm.
yeah, in the beginning, Severian moving around the tower, delivering letters, taking mules to some prisoners, like kind of the mundanity of his everyday acolyte life becoming a torturer was concrete. I really felt I was getting every little bit of this. I felt I was really following along, and it was really concrete, and I was really loving and enjoying every bit of it in this Act 1 before he leaves what he knows in the tower. So can do we want to take this first act when he's in the tower and all the little wonderful things about the tower when he meets like the head librarian and what the tower really is, and all of these amazing atmospheric little breadcrumbs that Gene Wolfe is dropping for us to help us understand about how many layers of civilization is buried one on top of the other as we're moving forward. So does anyone have something that they want to talk about or bring up? And maybe we can go to you first, Christopher, about like the first act or the first third of the book.
So we're doing spoilers now.
Yep, we are full on into spoilers.
Okay, so like I think maybe a useful place to start is about the place itself, right? So the Citadel is like an old spaceport, right? All the towers are old rocket ships, right?
Yep.
So when I just was reading, I think chapter 8 or so, Severian's talking about Master Gurlos and Master Palemon being the only people in the tower, unafraid of the mouthless voices, right, in the top that speak to the other towers, right? It's like old radio chatter. Either like things are coming in from the other towers just because systems are still on or something, right? And nobody really knows that's like really what it is anymore, or how any of that stuff works, right? There are old sort of like laser cannons that are floating in cradles of pure force, right? And all these lights that were supposed to burn forever have gone out, right? And all of this stuff, and the cells are in the launch flumes underneath, where the blast from ignition is supposed to be shot out the sides, right? And none of this is spelled out, right? You have to like sit there and be like, oh, that's what that is, right? And really, I think the place for me, and I think this is pretty typical, where a lot of this gets crystallized, is when he's speaking to Rudis and the curator on his way to the librarian, and he's looking at a painting of an Apollo astronaut, right? And he talks about a man, with a gold visored, set of armor, right, standing on a great desert, and he says like, oh, that's the Earth, the Earth behind over his shoulder right now, and that's Loon, right? It's a bit further away than it is now, so they've moved the moon, right? The moon is irrigated, things have changed, but like he doesn't say we irrigated the moon 2,000 years ago, as so many writers, myself included, occasionally do, right? You just, because the characters all know this. Why would it be in dialogue, right? And this is one of those things about Wolfe, right? Is that he completely commits to the bit, right? He doesn't like sort of break character ever, right? He doesn't blink. And this is one of those places where when we want to talk, I do want to mention specifically what Johanna was talking about. This series has been criticized for decades for the portrayal of its own characters. That's not Gene Wolfe, right? That's Severian, and I feel like I should say, like, I should like protect Gene Wolfe, right? Who did nothing wrong, actually, right? Severian, on the other hand, a few things for sure, right? And that's one of the ways in which he like doesn't break character, right? Like, there's no one in the book to call Severian out inside his own head, because he's not the kind of character that would. And so, for example, he kills a guy in the first chapter and does not say that he killed the guy. Did anybody notice?
Yeah.
I think he does not say outright, I killed that guy. It just happens. and he kind of skates over it, right? And I can't remember exactly when he finally says it outright, like he forgot he didn't tell you.
With the axe, right? Yeah.
With the axe, yeah. In the graveyard fight, right? He kills that dude, and he doesn't say I killed that guy or the axe hit him. It just the guy is there and then he's not there, right? And there's a lot of stuff like that in the book that happens by way of elision, either because Severian does not want to tell you, or because he doesn't know. So a lot of that stuff where you're saying like, why is this character here? I think that was you, Philip, right? That's because there's like another plot that he's not the main character of that's happening, right? And there are other characters. It'll be more obvious when we get into book 2. This is very hard, right? Because this is one book, it's not 4, and to really talk about any of it, right? It's when we get to book 4, it'll be a lot easier, let's say, to say with this. So when stuff that seems random is happening, it's because it only looks random to Severian, right? There are powers above the stage, right? Actually moving this, and it's no sort of symbolic accident that his traveling companions for a portion of this are theater performers, right? That's one of those symbols, right? And and
that would be Act 2
expanded as we move on, yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, I kind of strayed beyond the scope of Act 1 here, but. Like these are sort of ways to kind of get into thinking about the book generally. The place, the Citadel, the Monochin Tower in particular, sort of clue us into that by sort of way of illustration, right? We have to figure out where we are, right, on sort of this little, on this little stage before we go out. So,
how about the fact that the whole thing begins with Severian's baptism or rebirth or death in the river Gil, and he's just emerged from there. And considering that Gil in Norse mythology is the river that separates the living from the dead, sort of like the river Styx in Greek mythology. So it's really kind of I think it's a really cool way to start a book, actually, is with the main character's death, essentially. And of course we have to read that as Severian is just informing us about did he actually really die there? Was that, and in what sense, if this is a baptism of a sort or rebirth, in what sense is it? So I think it's a really, really cool opening. And it's, again, Gene Wolfe telling us right from the beginning, yes, this story functions on a literal level, but there's deep symbolism right from the get-go. Like, okay, we begin with this character emerging from his baptism, right?
Right.
You all feel like related to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Johanna. I'm going to go kind of opposite of the way we went before, so everyone will have an opportunity. Go ahead, Johanna.
Okay, sorry. This is a little bit just based on your point, Philip. Did you feel like, I don't know, I'm still trying to grasp, obviously, what's happening in this story, but did you all feel like there's like a certain juxtaposition that he's presenting through the themes? Like you said, like life and death, rebirth. Obviously, that's like there's some Catholic symbolism with that, but there's also this idea of like mercy and torture and love and hate. Loving what you hate or what you're going to destroy. There's also somebody who never forgets, but he forgets and he's unreliable. Like it just feels like we're playing with all types of juxtaposition with the themes.
How many times does he say, like in the beginning, he mentions it frequently of, I don't understand how it's like to forget. And I remember everything. But throughout the novel, something happens and it takes him a while to think because he doesn't remember the person until much later. Like it takes him a while to understand it. And so I'm going like, you're describing a lot of times of you forgetting and remembering, or at least not recalling it. It's so, yeah.
He glosses over that hard though. Like when he meets people that he's like, I've seen that person before, and he just moves on, right? And you're like, but did you just say you never forget?
Yeah, he said he protests too much. He says many times he never forgets anything, and then there's many times that he forgets something.
I think that's even more heightened by the fact that this is in some way a propaganda piece, right? He tells us at the end of, I think, chapter 1 or 2, he's backed into the throne. So he's writing this as the autarch.
Yes.
And so like he is writing this for people and he is in charge. And so like in what way does that, it being a propaganda piece, make even weirder kind of the way he approaches telling us he forgot, but he also remembers everything.
Yeah,
I
I wonder that. Does he actually forget, or is he just being very selective with what he says and when?
Right, but then he's not a good enough propagandist to not tell us also that he forgets, and he like switches up names of people. I believe he switches his friends' names in the first couple of chapters once. It's like almost like he's just not a good enough propagandist to accomplish being someone who never forgets, you know.
And he's also making
else,
points
Johanna?
all the time about how false, like he's always talking about how lies become truths. Like that is something that he refers to quite a few times in the beginning of the story. So speaking of those lies.
And also talks about how when justice becomes revenge, there's a little tidbit of that as well. So all these guys, you're right. I'm seeing that now as you say that with every single point throughout the book.
Right. Well, I mean, like the greatest act of love that he gave to Thecla was letting her kill herself.
Yeah, mercy.
Yeah.
I also wondered if there was some symbolism with the knife itself, like the mercy knife, because when he makes that quote about we believe we invent symbols, but the truth is they invent us. It seems like we're pointing out the coin being very specific there. The fountain, ship, rose. There were certain symbols that were outlined in that beginning section. But I looked back later on, and during that scene after he kills that man with an axe, he looks down and he finds a knife, and he makes some kind of connection too between the knife when he kills that guy and then the knife that he gives to Thecla. I don't know, just something I noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are moments, it seems like almost like it stutters between some important moments where what you think you see, it's almost like there's a stutter and there's it's actually something else. And it's like I was struck by like the rebirth being born again, or possibly almost dying and coming back to life at the beginning. I think he's starting to see his reality in a vastly different way from that moment than how he saw it before. So and
there's an old man who's looking for a woman in that scene who asks him, "Did you see a woman down there?" Right in the beginning. And of course, we all read the later section where he meets an old man looking for a woman in a lake.
I missed that. Okay.
Johanna missed that too, I could tell.
Yep. And the woman who comes out of the lake, this all happens after he has the claw of the conciliator, which obviously from his duel, the effect that had on him.
Right.
When he was again killed during his
Came
duel.
back,
Damn it, Philip! Now I have to read this again right now.
Yeah, and then
I caught the second one, but I didn't catch the first one. Oh my god! Okay.
The possible death and resurrection in the lake as well is tied directly to a godlike figure, right? Like it's not the claw at this point, but it's still, I'm saying the first one, right? The very beginning, they say that there's a female deity essentially that pulls them out, right? And so like if there's 3 death and resurrections within this first part, within the first quarter of this book, they all have a supernatural thing tied to them, whether it's the claw or like this big green lady in the river. I think that's interesting. Also, chapter 1 is called Resurrection and Death, right? Which is like a flip of death and resurrection, which I thought was interesting. Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, it's backwards.
Okay.
Interesting.
So things like Christopher just said it. So like one of the things, we've been talking about some of the symbolism here. Like one of the things to look for is things being inverted. This is going to happen like a lot throughout the book. So kind of the way to look at it is with how, the world is coming to the end of its life cycle in a sense, it's dying Earth. And so think of an inverted image once again, like what does it take, kind of what Christopher was talking about with the plot summary of like, okay, if somebody is to save the dying sun, save the dying Earth, well then who saves it? And it's a torturer, somebody who you think of as one being who brings death. So there's an inversion of that symbol right there. There's a lot of things like that throughout it. But just one other thing to note here is what Philip was saying with like the book begins. It is set chronologically before the scene at the graveyard. But it's chapter 2 where they talk about them swimming, and yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's a scene of baptism, which baptism is in terms of the Christian and Catholic tradition is two things. One, it's a symbol of death. You think of burial, and two, it's a symbol of birth. You know, with the fluid that you have of a child being birthed as well. But also in terms of the biblical symbolism of Jesus's baptism, the Gospel of Matthew makes a very distinct tie between Jesus's baptism and the flood of Noah, all the way at the beginning of the Bible in the book of Genesis, which is a symbol of the death of one world and the birth of another. So, and this is like, even I'm sure there's like tons of things that Christopher can point out, and if you listen to like Mark Aramini or other people, it's like it'll blow your mind. But like basic stuff like this is like, whoa, stuff that you get when, especially when you have discussions like this. And anyway, there's more I can say about this, but I don't want to talk too much.
But that's the psychology I was talking about. That kind of typological writing. What you're talking about there, Sam, with the flood being compared to a baptism and all of that. That's the kind of story this is. You have to pay attention to those things, those repetitions, those new incarnations of things that have happened before, but in ways that just slightly tweak them and give them new meaning. And they derive meaning from the old occurrences as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So fascinating.
Yeah, Sam, I was watching your review of this book, and you were saying how if there was a layer or a tier of allegory, you'd have obviously C.S. Lewis, direct, Tolkien, way less so, but still you think about it, and it's very easy to see the influences. And then this, you have to really try. It's completely influenced by Gene Wolfe's faith, and it's so clear, but you have to really find it. It is like you do with all the puzzles in this book. But I liked how you put that in a tier list for me to go, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because he's extremely subtle, but also the title is Resurrection and Death. So it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it does kind of spell it out.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
No, it is there. Let me. Yeah. Can we talk about one of the keys that's like sort of useful to understanding some of the symbolism?
Please.
Please.
It's names, right? Someone mentioned this in the comments already, but the humans all have the names of Christian saints. There is a Saint Severian. There is a Saint Thecla. There is a Saint Gerlos and a Palimon, right? Like they're often like very obscure saint names. But all the characters that are human have saint names. That means characters that do not have saint names are not human. I'll just say that much just outright, right? So be on the lookout for characters that don't have saint names. And if you have to Google each one and check, that's fine.
Can you remind me of that when we get into part 2?
Yeah, that would have been good to know.
Yeah, 100%.
Good old Saint Baldanders.
Yeah. So, oh, there's not one. Interesting.
Are we going to talk about Austin pulling out his computer as you say this?
Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, nice.
I'm curious.
Like this is like literally a key that helps start to unlock not just some of the world building, right, but some of the meaning, right? Because like, what are saints, right? Like they are people who died, in God's grace, right? Who are with God in heaven, right? And the fact that humanity has the name of saints, right, as Western civilization mostly did for a while, suggests that there's something sacred about humanity itself. Right. And that even in this brokenness, right, there's something special there. Right. And that sort of ties into the broader sort of thematic network there. So it doesn't just help us clue into the world building and start cracking the code of what is going on precisely, and helping solve some of those world building riddles, but it also connects back to the symbolic dimension for the story, and to help us make sense of what is going on, because then there are similar, let's say, naming schemes for other factions and types of characters that will suggest their relationship to humanity, right, and not just to Severian into the action of the drama itself. And so that's something to keep an eye out for, I suppose.
Jared,
I don't think that they're all martyrs necessarily. I would need to double check that, Jared, but.
Many saints are, but
a number
not
of them
all.
certainly are.
Yeah, Baldanders.
Specifically, Yeah,
Paintball, dude.
definitely not. But we should talk about Saint Catherine and the torturers, right? This is actually go to a Saint Catherine's, but a different Saint Catherine. Darn. But this is Saint Catherine of Alexandria, who was a martyr. Probably, maybe didn't exist. She was one of those sort of semi-mythical saints, but she was executed for being Christian by the Romans, right? She's broken on the wheel. That's why those fireworks are still called Catherine's wheels. Some version of that story is still retold in this world, in this time, because they still sort of believe some kind of Christianity, but it's very distanced from the text, right? There's there are churches and things, and people talk about God, right? And but it's distanced in the world building, so we don't have a clear look at exactly what the faith of the Commonwealth is. But they do have saints. I will note that the patron of these soldiers is Hadrian, not where I got the name. I'm just going to put that out there. I had the name already. But a nice coincidence. One of those things that just happens. But yeah, so this series actually started out as a novella called the Feast of Holy Catherine, and it's specifically about the investiture of the guild and stuff. And it began as a story about a young man going to war, which is where we are ultimately going, right? That is going to be part of the story. But that was sort of the kernel of this story, and it was about the sort of symbolic relationship between, between this guild and the function of the torturer and that sort of and the war and where we're going with things. So this St. Catherine thing, right? Also, it sort of really brings forward the saint motif, right? And because this is so important to this first act of the book, where with these torturers, right, and their patron is one of their victims, right? And this sort of like this is very complicated attitude they have towards the practice of torture, right? It's not fun for them, right? But they also don't hate it. They're very cold and like clinically distanced to it. But they I'm losing my train of thought here. But we get that very concretely in this first part of the book, and that's sort of our window into the world is through this dying insular society of torturers, right? Who sort of are symbolized by their victim, right? I've lost what I was trying to say.
That's all good. You made way more sense than I ever did on this stream. So thank God you're here. Does anyone else have anything about kind of the first act of the book they want to bring up or cover or ask a preacher? Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, as the resident Stephen King Uber fan, I wonder if King read this, because I got the vibes from the Dark Tower series of a world that has moved on, right? That's kind of falling apart in its almost reality. I don't know if that's just me viewing that in there, but would not be surprised if he had read this in some way, or is at least influenced by something that was influenced by it. Because that's what I got when I was reading the first part, especially, was like, this world feels like part of what's happening in the Dark Tower. The other thing that stuck out for me pretty early is, this idea of a dying world that needs to be made new is a very biblical theme. But I find it interesting that our main character is a torturer, because a torturer is pivotal to what happens with Jesus in the Bible. And we know that he had to die for us to be made new in Scripture. And a torturer, in a lot of ways, is like what was happening with the Romans who were crucifying people. They were not trying to get information. They were dispensing justice, right? And so in a lot of ways, Severian's not like a Christ-like figure. He's like the Roman official who is enacting what needed to happen, right, for the world to be made new and for us to be made new in the biblical narrative. So that kind of stuck out to me pretty early in terms of maybe why he was chosen to be what he was.
It's also important to remember that he was raised by the torturers. That's the only thing he knows. That's his worldview, his entire worldview. At that point, you have to admit, it's a pretty stunted worldview, and he's semi-aware of that as well. And the way he even views women is a product of that.
Yes.
that upbringing. Yeah, you're going to see him evolve in this in the next few books for sure.
Yeah.
But you always have to remember that this is what he was given, and he doesn't even really know who he is for sure. He has fantasies about how he might have been one of the aristocrats or the kid of an aristocrat or something like that, but he really doesn't know. So his interactions are, especially in this first part, very much a product of his limited experience of the world within that really small space. And
Right.
Yeah.
The only
see that,
women.
but-
Oh, sorry. You go,
Go
Joanna.
ahead, Joanna.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I see that, but at the same time, aren't we getting this perspective from future Severian? I mean, isn't he writing this? So like the framed part of the narrative kind of comes out here and there in the story.
Right.
So
Right.
And
so I don't know. I guess I
Joanna?
just wonder like how much of that is colored by his older self remembering things. And we're trying to trust his memory as he says it's
Yeah.
infallible or whatever. And how much of this story is like the genuine account of his youthful upbringing.
Yeah. I would assume he was worse than what he tells us in terms of his relationships with women. And I think we can actually maybe extrapolate that out. Like he subtly basically tells us that he has to dominate the prostitute before he decides he would like to sleep with her. Like he basically has to treat her like one of the women that he would be torturing by like putting himself in an authority position over her and kind of like physically dominating. And I mean, he grew up in a place where he knew two types of women, witches and the women that he tortured. Right. But I would like to think that he probably is sugarcoating even it a little bit within the frame narrative. He probably was worse to women because he seems to gloss over some things that like he definitely doesn't go, and I did this. He just kind of rushes past it a couple times.
I think we see that too when he starts to kind of work his way up the ranks with the apprentices. And we have that one little line where he just like made them all scared of him so that they would obey what he said.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, what did you do? But he just decided not to tell us.
Yeah. I kind of took that as like a, this happened to me. So I do it like maybe even we talk about symbolism, right? Like that was maybe a initiation type concept within the guild.
Yeah.
I do want to, so to his view on women, whether it's sugar coated, I think the scene with Severin and Agia, where they're having Agia basically when they're at the tournament of flowers, and she calls out Severin of the torturer, Severin bringer of death, and he hits her, and then the young woman Dorcas says like, if you shouldn't have done that, she'll hate you more. And it's like, it was only the flat of my hand. Like, what, you think she hates?
She hates me
now.
Yeah.
And, like, just the level of confusion of like, one, I did attribute some of that to him being a torturer and like the degree of pain and all these things he could inflict on people. That him hitting someone with the flat of his hand is the lightest of pain that he can do. So his level of violence in his world is just so different, and so he doesn't understand how that is actually like it's wrong and incorrect. So like, I think that's definitely the sugar coated that he will see it. It's probably way worse of what he actually did. And but I also did want to say something about, we've been talking about all these different references. Like one, Christopher, I didn't know that they were spaceships. I had no clue.
I didn't either.
No idea.
No, there we go. Yeah, they are.
I'm glad I know now. But like, I thought I was smart because when Severin was on a roof, he was describing it, and I was going like, "Oh, are those solar panels?" And I thought that was wrong.
No, they're like old.
You were right about that, though. They were. There were antennas and solar panels and
Solar
dishes.
panels.
Yes.
Maybe I got that one, but the scene that before all this, I went in with pretty. I was fairly blind. I knew sci-fi, funky world, but like I went in fairly blind on this. And the scene that really helped me like Gene Wolfe kind of beating me over the head of this is post future Earth, like, you know, dying Earth story of, was the scene when they're showing off the torture devices and saying, and the master torturer says, oh yeah, these lights, they all run on lightning. There's another word for it. I just don't remember it right now. And I'm like, oh, that he's talking about electricity. They do have electricity, but it's so far in the future that they've lost it. And that was the beating over the head that like Gene Wolfe like clued me in on and really helped me. And so that was the scene for me. Was there a scene for any of you guys where you go, I don't know how blind you went into it. No, like, did you know that this was a post future Earth, dying Earth story? Was there a scene that clued you in of, oh, I need to start looking for these things?
Definitely the picture of the moon in the gallery. And I would also say the scene where later, after Severian has the claw of the conciliator, the jewel thing, and he and Dorcas are walking together, and they see over the city this huge, he describes it as
Another city, right?
a city, like a mountain or something. It's just this monstrous thing that suddenly appears after he had taken out the claw of the conciliator. And it's just like, what is that thing? Right?
Yeah.
He and Dorcas saw. Maybe I shouldn't say too much about it, but it is definitely a scene that sticks out to me and makes me think there's something maybe extraterrestrial about this, right? That it could be like a vast, well, I won't say too much, and was it responding to him taking out the claw of the conciliator as well? Or was it just a coincidence that it appears right after he does that, right? So that was a scene that definitely sticks out to me.
If it's a coincidence, I don't know that I'll ever understand these books.
We'll get you there.
Richard, the scene that stuck
really
out
hard for me. Go ahead, sorry.
The scene that did that for me
people,
was the scene that did that for me was the Triskel with the dog, realizing that it was definitely not a dog, or anything near a dog, probably like a giant bear, like something. If you start to really like how big it is, what its head looked like. But then like it just walks away and goes like into the regular area, but it's also like this giant monster creature, which we then get a little bit of a weird vibe. There's a bunch of monster creatures in the wall at the end of this book. Like they're monster creatures, just normal, I guess. But like realizing that wasn't a dog was that moment for me of like, oh, these words they don't mean what we think they mean, right?
Yeah.
The tricycle wasn't a dog?
No.
No. Well, he's what they call.
It was just a weird dog.
No, I mean he was like, I think he was like 9 feet long and had a head like it was a long head with a snout. Like, yeah, it's more like a giant bear if you wanted to get closer, I think, right?
Pretty sure. Are you sure this was your first read? Can you teach us more?
Yeah, because I thought dog. I think I just got carried away in my head with dog.
Yeah,
So
same.
Well, he's been eating his kibbles.
Future dog.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Future dog.
Yeah.
Also,
Like,
he might have died too.
I can't
right?
remember
Like,
if it's
the
this
dog
book
might
or not where the
been
horses
resurrected.
have claws.
Yes, the horses are not horses either, for sure.
Yeah, horses are not horses either. So
I
think it's towards the end of the first act. And I went in knowing about the dying Earth and all that kind of stuff. So I was looking out for all those things all along. But when we get to it starts with the rebirth, and then he starts seeing his world in a different way, and the mundanity starts to melt away as he delivers these letters, and he starts to look for things, and he starts to realize relationships with Thecla and these things. This is like a whole new world to him. And at the very end, when he kind of goes all the way up to the top of this tower, and he's basically standing in the bridge of this rocket, and he's looking at the old disused screens and looking out over everything. That was the scene that stuck out to me as quite beautiful as he looks across this vista of the world that he's going to be entering into from the dead bridge of this rocket ship. And he's going to be leaving behind everything he knows. And then it's when he leaves behind everything he knows that we get into Act 2. And it's like, I got the flu and someone put mescaline in my NyQuil. And the whole thing became like a bizarre fever dream for me.
Yep. I agree. Actually, I mean, honestly, I loved the Citadel the most. Like that was
Yes.
my favorite part of the book. After we left, I did like the first part of that journey outward, though, when
Yeah.
they end up with Balderas and Doctor, the robot guy, Doctor
Talos.
whatever.
Dr. Talos.
Yeah, I kind of liked the part where they're all like,
The
"Let's
robot
go
guy.
get breakfast and coffee. Let's go get mochas." Like I don't know, that was
Yeah.
kind of fun.
It's an actor's life for me. Let's have breakfast. So
But we can't pay for it.
yeah,
We
we
can't
can't
pay
pay for it.
An
So how
actor's
was
life.
all right? How was Act 2 for everybody? Let's get into it. To me, this was the fever dreamiest part
100
of the book.
Is the oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the part. Is the part that felt like the back half of Howling Dark in part 2?
Oh,
The like the garden and stuff. Is that part 2 or is that part 3?
Ooh.
That'd be
Part 2,
No, no,
the
that's in-
garden
that's in
when they
part
go to get the flower.
Yeah,
would
that's
say
part 2. Okay,
I would
yeah,
say
yeah.
that's part 2.
Yeah. I read Howling Dark first, and then I read that. And as I was reading it, I was going, "This is that part in Howling Dark." But Christopher wanted me to know what was going on in Howling Dark. Am I correct on that, Christopher? Is there a lot of influence there?
I don't think that I was consciously thinking of the gardens from New Sun at all. Actually,
It feels
that
so
section.
much. Oh, it feels so much like certain parts about 3/4 of the way through Howling Dark.
I can totally see that.
Okay.
But I don't want to say what I was thinking about because then people will.
Yeah. I was trying to be spoiler free on that.
Yeah, we can't get spoiler into Sun Eater.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, but I can like totally see that, and I think Howling Dark is like the one book that is like most Wolfy. I think it backs off a bit after that. At least I tried to, so I can like for sure. Right,
I do have.
There's a very high chance that's coming through.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, I was gonna say I do have, before we get too far into Act 2, I did have a quick question for Christopher. So something that there's a detail I noticed. Did I misread something, or are the like aristocracy, like are they genetically different and like bigger and taller than because I missed this detail before where it described Thecla as being as tall as the ceiling in her cell, which I'd missed. I was like, that's not how I pictured Thecla at all before.
Yeah, she also has like a huge widow's peak.
No.
Other things, yeah.
Oh, also too,
they probably look real freaky.
Yeah.
Purple eyes too.
Sorry for dipping into Act 1 again, but Thecla I liked a lot because of her confidence that she was going to get out of that, and then that came across as just how different this world was for her. And I guess the biggest I trust Gene Wolfe moments of yes, I was very confused throughout, but it was Thecla and then the Aja plot lines where we get thrown in Act 2 of they're in the shop. And then all of a sudden, hey, I challenge you to a duel. I'm like, where did that come from?
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Right, I'm just going, oh, okay. But then later in Act 3, when we find out, oh, you were challenged to the duel because you had this sword, and it was worth 10 times what the shop was worth. I was just starting to go, okay, so Gene Wolfe has, I think Christopher said this earlier, but Severian is just one part of he has his own plot going on, but it feels like these other characters have their own plots and detailed main characters of their own stories going on that I guess I'm just so out of the loop of, but I'm going, okay, by the end of book 4, which I'm confused with a lot right now, but I'm trusting that all of these random events that have still ended randomly, I'm going, okay, he's got a plan for everything. But for me in Act 2, that was one of the things I was initially just very I was untrusting at first. I don't know if anybody else was going, hey, thrown into the room, dual challenge, and I was going, whoa.
I must have been I confused something. Maybe this is what was intended. Sam, Christopher, Philip, maybe you can confirm this for me. But the series of events when he's walking around and he's confronted by the guardsman, and he's basically pulled into a separate room of like, hey, you can't be dressing like that. Like you're freaking people out. And this basically he tries to leave, and the other guardsman's like, You're just gonna let him go. You believe him. He's not faking. And the guy's like, show him you are who you are. And Severin beats the snot out of this, out of the other guard. Later on during the scene, when he is confronted, given the black seed of challenge, whatever it is, I thought it was like, you've been challenged by a guard, like a knight or something like this. And I was like, oh, is this
because of the
that
beating?
guard? Was it because he beat up this one
I didn't even connect
guard?
that. Was that the
And
case?
that's like,
yeah,
it's clearly not after,
Okay, yeah.
after reading the book, but that's my thought, is going, oh, Severin, like that's the series of events, like he insulted this guard who is somehow connected, and he challenged Severin to a duel. That's what I had thought going through the whole book.
Good head lore. I like it.
Well, no,
Then at the end.
I was actually trying to wonder, like, oh, why is this happening? And then when it came around of, oh, actually, it was this whole plan all along to get the sword.
Right.
It did get me.
Threw you for a loop.
Because I actually had at least, I thought that was the point. I thought Gene Wolfe put that there deliberate to make me think that, to give some explanation of why the duel didn't just come out of nowhere for me. I had a reason, I thought. It just was incorrect.
Yeah.
I had the same thoughts.
I completely
Richard.
agree with this
Go
comment
ahead.
here, and I completely agree with you. Yes, it does. Yep. Go ahead, Jacob.
I had the same thoughts, Richard. That I thought it was just a complete misdirect of like, well, he's being challenged for seemingly no reason, as far as we know right now. It must be because he just beat the crap out of this guard, and there's a report or somebody's upset, and they're trying to get rid of this guy in the city. And I wonder if that was specifically added there to be a misdirect, so that you could actually have your own little answer to the question, at least until you find out that that's not the case.
I find it fascinating that he is so enamored with this chick in the street that he doesn't even ask those questions, right? He's not like, hold on. He's just like, I think she pretty. I'm going to go with her. Like,
she's the most beautiful girl in the world.
But he also describes her as that's ugly. When he first sees her, he's like, she's not really, I took it as she's not Thecla, but I'm enamored.
But he describes,
this is what I'm saying.
Every girl as the most beautiful girl in the world.
If you go back to, if you
this
go
is-
back
this
to
is-
when he first sees her, he says some negative things about her appearance.
He
This is
does,
true.
but he does.
And
But he
he's like,
describes every.
He's attracted to her though.
But I thought he went like, yeah, she's ugly, but in a pretty way.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
So I think it was followed up by that. So
It was like, yeah, I should say.
It's like it was that. For me, there was no emotional build for motivation of some of the things he does here. And that's why I think we get that stutter between scenes, or that stutter between moments for me. Like, okay, we're going along, and then all of a sudden the peyote kicks in and there's a duel happening. Like Austin said, like, where did that come from? Like, the dude was in there shopping, and then all of a sudden first of all, I didn't think he had money, and now he's shopping, and now there's a duel, and now it's like, and then there's a camera shake and stutter again, and we're moved on to something else. And all of a sudden, it's the flow that I felt from Act 1 was disrupted entirely for me. And it was because there wasn't emotional builds from one motivational moment that what Severian's doing to the next. Christopher?
I think he did have a little bit of money, though, right?
I agree with everything you're saying. Sure.
He did have money. Right?
It is.
I was hoping you'd tell me I'm wrong and explain what I didn't see.
No, it is a lot more disjointed. But like, I think that's on. It's just very hard for me to talk about any of this, like even like the Severian's attitude towards women thing, because there's like book 2, and so like it's very But this whole section is like Severian is also confused, right? And so there is like my first read through, I was sort of was it Austin was saying, I was just like, okay, I'll give you this one, Gene Wolfe. Like, there's a duel happening. I don't know why. And you do get those answers, right? And this is like a very typical pattern for the series, right? Is the answer comes so like far down the road, right? That you don't even remember why you started down the road. You're like, oh, that's why this is happening. Okay. Right. And like, it's pretty straightforward, right? Like, actually, he just went into the wrong shop with a very shiny sword and they wanted it. And Team Rocket spent the rest of the book trying to get it from him. You know,
Rocket.
they don't have a cat, but like,
Stealing that one
you
for
know,
our review.
yeah, you know, that's, I don't know. They always reminded me of
Here,
them.
Jer-
But
enlightenment here. He grew up in the guild. He's a hulking freak walking around with a big sword. He's going to get into some scuffles and not understand women. Don't look any deeper than that.
Can we change the back of the book
Johanna,
to just say that?
Johanna pointed out something really important earlier. I think it was maybe when Christopher stepped out, but he or maybe it wasn't. I don't remember. But she said
sorry
that
about that.
it may be
No,
that
no.
narrator Severian's perspective is impacting how the story is being told. And to what Christopher said, of like, there's not much you can say other than to say yes. And one like key point just to note on the whole like women thing is Preacher noted, like Severian, it's like, oh, he's attracted and like in love with every girl that he meets. But if you notice, it's described differently. And it's because there's some symbolic stuff going on there too. But also, I never noticed this before until this read through. There's one significant female interaction that he has that I noticed that was, he used very different language in how he described it. And it's when Triskele escapes and he's looking for her and he bumps into a girl named Valeria.
Yes.
And
I remember
that stood out to me because, and I'm sure Philip remembers this as well as Christopher, she, just to say, she's important. And I was like, oh, and that makes sense why she's being described in very different language from the other female characters that he's interacting with.
Can I ask a question on that too?
Yes, Jake, ask a question.
So just to make sure, like, am I, if I'm not supposed to understand yet, then that's fine. But everything with like the witch's tower and that girl, and then there's like the bear tower next to it. I'm like, should I know exactly what those are yet, or are they just not fully explained? Like, he went up and he met this girl, but I'm like, okay, is she an actual witch? Is it like a
Okay, so Valeria is not a
brothel?
witch.
Like, what's happening?
Valeria is not a witch. She is in a different part of the Citadel. To get to where Valeria was, he went down into the tunnels, which were the like exhaust flumes for the rockets, and he went like way out this way and came out in a different place. The Witch's Keep is the next tower over from his tower. It's another rocket ship in this like array of rockets that's ready to go. So not there at all. We never go in the Witch's Keep. We do see witches later, and they are great. But so cool. But has nothing to do with Valeria. As far as the bear tower, it's not super relevant. Really. It's just that that's where, is it the soldiers, or they have a different name? It's one of the other guilds, right? So there are all these old guilds, right, that are part of the sort of apparatus of not just the state, but like the market, right? And it's just another step down, right? It's like the librarians are important, but like they're librarians, right? Just sort of, I wouldn't worry too much about the bear tower, I guess.
Cool.
Which is a little bit more.
Okay.
I'll throw in my favorite part of part 2 or of Act 2 at least was the
Please do.
the I don't know what to call it, the hotel owner, motel owner that was trying to kick out the two guys that only paid for one night. It was like, oh yeah, go sleep with them. Maybe that'll figure some things out. And I was like, that's a really smart way of doing that. And so like how he just ran into the Dr. Valar, the doctor and bald guy. Those two, the introduction to those two characters was going, okay, this makes sense. Okay, I'm getting introduced to the Fellowship. And then they went away for a while and then
they go away.
Yeah. But that was fun.
Well, that does bring up the confusion of, maybe I was confused about it, of he started off the journey and he was not allowed, he was not given anything, and I thought he didn't have money. That he was just gonna have to walk.
He didn't.
And when he went into the inn, he didn't have money. He's like, I'm not paying for the food, I can't pay for the room, and so he was able to stay there free. but then immediately thereafter, when he went into the shop, he was apparently able to
Buy clothes.
pay. He's able to buy clothes. And so I'm like, where did this money? And then later on, he's like, oh no, I have plenty of money. Oh,
He had
Philip.
money, didn't he? Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
He
I
was-
tried it. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Rich. But
Oh, no,
I
you're
do have
good.
to go. I'm very sorry, but I will watch the rest of what you guys have to say, and I'm looking forward to our next discussion very much. So
Bye,
Thanks,
Philip.
Dr. Chase.
Thanks
Bye,
for
Phil.
coming, Philip.
I felt
Always a pleasure.
if I can find the leave button, that is.
You're stuck
Bye,
for
everybody.
You're
Bye,
stuck.
Philip.
You're stuck
Yeah.
here.
well. But yeah, to continue on with the money thing, I didn't understand where he got the money because it seems like he had absolutely no money, and then he had plenty of money for
Yep.
buying clothes, food, and significant money.
Wasn't he given money before he left? Is that the same reason you
That
were
sounds
sighing,
right.
Jake? Because I feel like you and I remember
I'm
the
just-
same thing.
I remember him. I'm gonna pull up my notes right now. I remember he had money. I'm
He
trying to
was
remember where
given
he
money
got it.
before he left the guild, I thought.
That
because
was
he
one
had
of
to
those-
buy clothes to cover his black cloak.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
But
Yes.
he didn't have money.
But no.
He was given money, is what I mean.
Yeah.
Then
From-
why
He
did
didn't
he
work
go
for
to the
anything.
inn and not like
Yeah.
didn't
We
pay
went
for
to
the
end. I
food?
can't buy
Said,
food.
I can't pay
can't
for
get
this.
a room. I
And
don't
he's like,
have any
I don't-
money.
And
Was that,
he was walking.
after? Was that after that or
No,
before?
before.
That?
He was
before
going
that?
around going, I can't buy a room. I thought I was gonna just like stay under a tree, but I'm just gonna go in here and like push my weight around and just
Yeah.
sit.
That's a good point. I'm so confused now.
So
But I
why
do
did-
kind of remember money being involved. I don't know.
Sam,
Hold on,
Sam,
I'll-
or
I'm
Christopher,
trying to
do
save the
you,
day.
do you both have clarity there?
Well, I did not get to this point in my reread, and this is a detail I'd never paid much attention to before. So I don't have a clear answer here. I was just seeing if I could look it up in the text. I have a searchable.
Okay, yeah.
But
I don't remember that either. But now that you're saying, it, I think that was the case, right?
Well,
I kinda remember,
he either
like-
walked in and he lied, and he just didn't want to pay.
That's what
He
I was.
just
It might
refused
have been a situation that he glazed by. Like he had money, but through you only got the context through dialogue that he's telling these people, "Oh, I don't have money. Wink. I just want to stay here."
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
that's
feel
what-
like
I
even
got it.
before that, he was telling like, I don't have money for an inn. I was gonna stay in a tree, but
Yeah.
I was so
Hmm.
tired. I walked into this inn anyway and just sat down.
Yeah, we got people
And
in
I know
chat
they
saying
couldn't
he
pay.
was given money by the
Okay.
Jackmaster.
He was given my.
He just didn't want to pay him. Fair.
I don't
Fair
have like
enough.
textual
He's being
stuff
cheap.
to back
Got
this
it.
up.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have textual stuff to back this up, but my recollection was like he wanted a place to sit, but like he's thinking of how far of a journey he has.
Yeah,
and
that's
doesn't
what-
want to
that's
pay
the way
for
I
an
took
inn
it
the
as
first
well.
night, and kind of like
Okay.
bargains. And of course, the innkeeper's like, "Well, I can scare these guys out. These people who are staying here
Yeah.
without paying by putting in the big hulking guy."
I remember this. This is
yeah,
absolutely-
hopefully reading
That's
has
right,
jogged my
that's
memory.
right.
That's
Yes.
what it is, right? Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
solving the
Thank you.
mystery.
Well, I
And
missed
with
that.
Titan's Vision, though, I don't think this is a very significant detail.
Yeah.
No,
But-
it's just where I was confused.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I will say I picked up that, the bard was a robot.
I did not.
Yeah.
Good job.
I did
Raise of
not.
hands.
Nope.
Who,
Yeah,
who
Was
did
it the
not?
teeth because they
I
were
did
the
not.
holes? I remember
I picked
that.
that up.
Did not know there was robots.
No.
How
I-
did you
Yeah.
catch it was a robot?
That's
You didn't
to me-
sleep
how did
or
you
eat.
like
Jake, I'm just
He
as
doesn't
baffled.
sleep, he
Let's
doesn't
break this
eat,
down.
he has
I missed
To
it
me,
the
I'm-
1st
I'm like-
time, actually.
He doesn't
So,
sleep. He doesn't eat.
Okay.
I guess I'm like,
He also
how do we
moves like
miss the rocket
C-3PO.
ship? that
I
we-
thought he was just being hyperbolic,
Also, I thought, I thought he did sleep.
no.
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 He says
No.
he says I don't sleep much, but you never
Yeah.
see him sleep.
You never see
I
him sleep.
kinda-
He says,
yeah.
"I'll keep watch. You guys sleep. I don't." Yeah. No, he never.
Oh,
I
yeah, he
knew
was
he was
out,
weird.
right? He was out for
Yeah.
2 days, right? And keeping watch.
Hold
That's
on, a
right.
minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he never
Okay.
was in the room when Baldanders was
Baldanders
asleep.
is not the I thought Baldanders was a robot. You're
No,
saying
no.
Dr. Talos is
Dr.
the
Talos.
robot.
Talos.
Yeah.
Dr. Talos is a robot.
Right.
now
So
we're finding-
Oh.
Baldanders
that's
is
the
human,
name
apparently,
thing,
so.
right? So, like, Talos is not a saint, right? It is, in fact, a robot built by the god Hephaestus. If you've
Yep.
seen Jason and the Argonauts, you will perhaps remember Talos is in it. So he's for sure a robot.
So then I
All
have a
right.
question about Baldanders. Sorry, Austin.
Yeah. No.
I'm gonna stop right over you.
Yeah, stop it. Go ahead. Just rampage. Go.
God, who raised you?
Wasn't it mentioned at one point? It was you. Wasn't it mentioned at one point that Baldanders does not dream when he sleeps?
Yes.
I think so.
But they shared a dream. Severian and Baldanders shared a dream when they were sleeping in the inn next to each other.
Did
Am
they
I
share a
remembering
dream,
this
or
right?
did they like
They did
dream
share a
of each
dream.
other?
You
They
were
did like
you were right.
there was some okay. There was some weird magical sharing dream situation happening there. But he
Yeah.
doesn't dream, he says later. Did he
Maybe
steal
the
a dream?
exception? The exception doesn't make the rule, maybe?
I have a theory about how the dream sharing works, but I don't think I can tell you yet.
Okay.
That's
If
book
Christopher
two.
doesn't totally know how it works, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
You feel better about yourself?
But as far as Boldenders not dreaming normally, that I don't recall there being a rule about.
I might be
think
misremembering that.
Yeah.
It could be that Baldanders was just being hyperbolic.
Yep.
Because he says,
I
I
can see
never dream. And
That was because I didn't
Yeah.
know what to take as hyperbolic or not of not sleeping and whatnot. But now that you're pointing out the details, makes sense. I guess
I'm
I
now
have a comment
completely
on.
understanding. Okay, the
No, it makes sense.
Dr. Tallis, like, yeah, we don't see him sleep. He's always out. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it now.
And then by act 3, we find out that he can turn a girl in a coffee shop into the most physically attractive woman that you've ever met. Right?
Well, that's
Every
stage
woman's the
magic.
most attractive woman that's Severian's ever met.
Seemingly so.
He somehow physically changes her to the point that,
Yeah.
that Severian doesn't recognize her, right?
But toddler thing here for 1 second. I got to be right back.
Oh, you're
Okay,
good.
absolutely.
I have a question for you all. So, just based on this robot conversation, which John, great, I'm picking it up. Did anybody else pick that up, or because I know we raised hands? Did nobody else?
I know Sam did.
No,
I
Okay,
knew
Sam,
that
yeah.
I knew that Talos was not human. I was
Yeah.
leaning more towards godlike creature because of the changing her or some magical thing. But I'll take robot.
I think
Sure.
satanic. So yes, but reversed.
I guess my thing is Gene Wolfe being more obscure than he needs to be. Like, wouldn't our main character, Severian, wouldn't he be like describe something about the metal or just like the shine to make it a slightly like? Wouldn't he make some observation? Or it's not like normal. He runs into robots all the time, right?
Well, maybe he does. We don't know.
Possibly
I mean,
he
no,
does.
I don't
He
think
says
he
he
did
has
at the Citadel. I
Austin, he
think
does-
in
he
the
says he has a mouth of metal.
He says he has a mouth of metal. Okay, I'm just
Says he has a
just
or
not
a
picking
mouth
up on
of
stuff.
gold,
That's on
I
me
should
then. That's a
say.
reader
Yeah,
issue.
I did notice that. I noticed that like
Yeah.
he had gold teeth or something, and that he was
Yeah,
dressed
yep.
foppishly or something. but
Metal.
I didn't
Maybe he
catch
has
on.
grills.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he's also like a more human-looking robot. Could be the case. Which maybe it's not maybe it's not C-3PO like I'm thinking in my head when I hear robot. Maybe it's more humanoid robot, so it's very subtle. That could
No,
also be the
it's definitely
case.
humanoid because
Yeah.
I mean, he did a large part of the, when they do the stage show, he
Yep.
does a large part of that. So much so that when they're splitting up
That
the
makes
money at the
sense.
end, they're saying, you did most of the acting. Don't you
Yeah.
want a good chunk of the change here?
Right.
And he's like, no, don't need it. And just passes it out to all of them because he's a robot. He doesn't need to eat or anything else. He doesn't need money.
That makes so much more sense. Oh, this is satisfying. Oh,
Austin, you
He,
can't just leave your laptop open.
yeah. I'm trying to not be rude and like just
On the
I'm blocking it off.
on the topic of names meaning things, obviously I've read as much as you guys have, but Baldanders is a reference to like a German myth, and that guy like changes his forms throughout the myth, and so I'm wondering if like the Baldanders we're getting is
Sam.
Look at Sam.
He is not just he is not just some giant lugging kind of also thought it was hilarious when he just ran at the people at the end of the play.
Yeah, that was good.
Hulk smash.
Yeah.
But one thing that I wanted to get confirmation on, because I thought I picked it up and we haven't mentioned it yet, and it's all the way back in Act 1, but it's like it's going to come back up again in Act 3. People eat people, right? Like dead bodies,
I got
Yeah.
yeah.
right? Like they were digging up the dead
Indeed.
body to eat it.
And there was some
Okay.
interesting conversation too about like the life force or something about the
Yeah,
person's
and it's
identity coming into the person who eats them, and then if two people eat them, is it the same?
it's referenced again. That's why he has to take the body after he cuts Aegea's brother's head off,
Yes,
because they
yep.
don't want the people to eat his body.
Yeah.
And I was
Well, 'cause
like,
I think it was Jake that was texting. It was like, what were they doing in the graveyard? And I was trying to remember. I was like, I think it's in this book that they said but I couldn't find it in that scene. You're right, Preacher. It's later on.
It's barely referenced, and
Mhm.
and it's hinted, like Johanna said, that it's for some empowering on a spiritual purpose.
You'll
not.
you'll find out a
explained.
lot more about the corpse eaters later on in the.
Okay.
Oh, sick.
The corpse eaters.
Oh, they got a name.
So that was what they were doing, like Vodalis?
Voladis.
Vodalus.
Vodalus.
I thought it was Vodalus.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what they're doing at the very
Vodalus.
beginning, right?
Yeah.
They were
Yes.
basically they needed a fresh one, so as soon as they died, okay, that's
And
starting
that's
to make
why
sense.
when Severian and the apprentices are coming, they run into a bunch of volunteers who are like, "We're here to defend our dead." It's like,
Yes.
what?
Yeah.
And then, well, that's why.
Which is
Okay.
weird, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking about.
Vodalus.
Why else? Like I was thinking like
Vodalus.
other mystical things, but yeah, cannibalism is the simple one. But
Um,
okay, can someone explain to me with that is the same body that later on in Act 2, where they're going, the guy on the boat is trying to find his dead wife, and like that's apparently the body, like that's the same woman.
I was wondering that too. That was like my thought.
It's him.
but I'm-
It's-
aren't they
it's
different
the-
locations?
It's one of
They're
the
they're very
three-
different locations. Yeah.
Yeah,
Richard,
it's
you're
one
a
of
little
the
bit.
three people, right?
I
Yeah,
know.
it's a little mix. So there's two people that are in the watery flower grave area. One is a guy who's looking for his dead wife, and then there's a second guy
Correct.
who is the one who's a person
Who actually
was with
takes him
Vodalus
across.
at the beginning.
The
Right. So
Hildegard.
it is
Yeah,
two
yeah.
different people. Yeah, Hildegard.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's Vodalus, that guy, and Thecla's sister, who are the three people in the graveyard
Yeah.
at the
Yeah,
beginning.
yep.
Yeah.
Is
and
Dorcas,
Mr.
is that the one that comes out of the water?
Yes.
Dorcas?
Yes.
And that's not the
Yep,
same
definitely.
woman that the man is looking for previous
No.
to that?
It is. It is.
So-
It is.
Could be.
It is disagreed upon, I think, whether or not Dorcas is man's wife that he's looking for.
Man's wife.
Yeah.
The
I'm
guy-
not
the
sure
guy
how I
who's
feel
looking
about
for
that.
his
I
wife.
wondered.
The guy who's looking
Hilda.
for his wife. There's some. I mean, there's some hints that she may be. I mean, it happens directly afterwards, and in my opinion, I don't think he does that not on purpose, right? Like, hey, I'm looking for my wife who's under this water. Also, here's a woman from under the water.
Yeah. See, this is my
Yeah.
question. Is it a weird timeline thing, or is it a weird?
Yeah.
Like, Severian
It's in a
doesn't
timeline.
know.
I didn't even think of that.
So
Because
here's.
she's supposed to be an
I'm
old
pretty
woman,
sure it's
right?
the
But
claw.
he describes her as being young.
All right. Can I?
Okay.
If it's another timeline, he got pulled into hers because she was under him. So like
She was
she
under him.
grabs his arm when he falls in, and he said he's getting pulled down, and then he gets pulled up. And they just played with the mirror ideas, and like water is like a mirror.
Jeez,
So
dude.
I'm gonna
Maybe-
say Anvil.
maybe
No, my
he got
brain is
pulled-
Okay.
explode now.
Maybe he got pulled.
Jake needs a
Down.
Snickers.
We're in like a weird like Davy Jones ship inverting the ocean. Pirates of the
This is
Caribbean.
what I
Is that
said
we're
about
talking
Act 2.
Is
Well,
this
hold
what we're
on,
talking
hold on.
about?
Someone brought up. All right, Sam, you're up. What happened? Because this
Okay.
confused me the most out of the entire book.
Yeah, y'all discuss the story Thecla tells about the kid who meets the guy who shows them this fish in mirrors.
Oh yeah, yeah. I love
Right.
that story.
So there's a couple things there. One is I want Christopher to weigh in on this if he's able to come back eventually. But like the idea is it's like Father Aniri, he's a what do they call him? Do they call him a sorcerer? I don't remember what word they use exactly. But somebody who works with arcane knowledge. And so the idea is it's some sort of teleportation device that he has. So you think of if you've ever been like in a room where there's two mirrors facing each other and the images have this like repetition effect. So somehow, and this is what I would ask, I have this written down of like ask Christopher about Father Aniri's mirrors. but somehow that allows Father Aniri to teleport things to other places, and then people also use that. I think they mentioned that Hethor, the sailor, at the end of this book, uses a similar device to bring things to Earth.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Which that is one of my favorite world building notes. Is that I don't know if you guys caught this or not, but sailor is used to describe people who both are crew members on water ships and on spaceships.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing
so.
that confused me too about that whole section is
This whole section confused me.
right. That is presented. It's presented that way. But then he mentions that some of the people who go into this garden, right, are just normal people from this timeline who basically get sucked in and then start to play act like they're people from other timelines. And then they see the two people who seemed like they're like Christian missionaries talking to someone from like an island country about Jesus.
I'm cracking up looking at Jake right now.
Right.
And so he's getting a headache that starts right here.
The question I got
and
from
Jake,
that
remember what tent you were in? You were in the tent that
I warned you.
This.
I warned you.
Jake, we're both
with you,
leaving
Jake.
that
Don't worry.
tent. We both left the tent a while ago.
We're lost in the forest.
man.
There is no tent.
Sorry,
Yeah.
preacher, what were you saying? Yeah.
So the question that I kind of got from that was like, are the two missionaries, are they looking in on the past, right? Which the appendix tells us that there's interplay between the past and the future because Gene Wolfe gets this manuscript from the future within the story of Red Shadow of the Torturer. So are they looking into the past and seeing this like Christian missionary scene play out that's like from our time or close to it? Or are there people who go into this garden and they essentially become so enthralled with the garden that they begin to almost pretend to be people from 2000 and whatever. And they just kind of get stuck in this loop is how it's described. But he doesn't tell us which one those people are. He just says both happen. And I'm just like, what? But that's what I got from it.
Johanna, you said you loved this section. Why did you
No.
like what did you get from it?
No,
I didn't say
Johanna's
that.
with me.
Oh, you did? I thought you said you loved that section.
My favorite is the beginning, the Citadel section at the beginning.
Oh, okay. I
After
thought I heard
that, and I said I kind of liked the coffee scene just because I thought, oh, this is kind of fun to go get coffee in a fantasy.
She's like, it's a cozy novel.
That was fun.
Yeah, so it became a cozy fantasy sci-fi.
We're getting
You know,
coffee with an
lattes
acting
and
group.
torture.
It's cool.
There you go. But no, I actually agree with John. I found that the storytelling felt kind of disjointed in the middle section. I had a hard time feeling grounded in this middle section of the story.
Yes.
Personally.
Yeah.
100%.
100%. And for me, like if we just, because I know we've been going a while, guys, and there's so much to talk about in this book. But for me, when we get to the point where we find this whole Act 2, this whole second section was basically just a con by the brother and sister to get Severian's sword. When he realizes this was all just a con, then it smooths out again. From that point on,
I agree. No, I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking the way I was framing it in my head when I was reading the book was like, oh, I'm loving this book. I'm loving this book. And then when I got to that middle section, I was like, I'm kind of having a hard time feeling grounded and having the same level of enjoyment. But then I kind of pinned it on Agia. How do you say her name?
Agia.
Agia, or however we say her name. I kind of pinned it on her. I'm like, I think I'm just kind of frustrated in the parts she's in. And then the second she went away, I was like, oh, I'm liking this again. And then, but it still kind of came together. I like how it came together.
As soon as we realized it's a con and he got pulled into this duel and the whole kind of thing was her and her brother trying to get the sword from him. From that point on, when we had that resolution, I was great. I was fine from there on out.
Same.
I agree with Cuban Boy here. It was actually what I was gonna say. I felt like Severian did that on purpose to make us stop thinking about the fact that he was an idiot and got duped super hard. Like that was what I took.
Okay. That makes sense.
It was like, and then I was running into a building with my chariot and then I was in the gardens
Big-
and then I
Big
felt like it was-
question. All the other stuff, like the garden, I think even made more sense. Just despite all of it, of the weird chariot thing of they're going to the place,
Oh, the race.
and then we all of a sudden are having a chariot street race.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, what? We're racing that guy now? Why? Is this what's happening? And then we crash.
It's part
Yeah.
of the ploy.
What is all that? What was that?
I thought
It's Spartacus.
it's part of the ploy. Aegea wants the claw too, and she saw an opportunity to get a 2-for-1. It's a 2 birds, 1 stone situation.
So she deliberately raced,
Yes.
and we went down winding corners and deliberately crashed into this place.
Uh-huh.
That was all a plan.
Actually, that is correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did some Googling. That was the plan.
Yeah.
No.
That's the plan
No.
from the rip.
No.
And then she lets
No.
him she gives it to him so that if she gets like searched, she won't ever have it. And then when he dies, she wants to grab the cloak and the sword and get the claw and the sword.
Yeah,
She
it's
just
more
got
than
it
that
wrong.
too, right? She puts the claw on him so that when they ask him if he has it, they can't truth detect, right? Because
Yep.
they they can tell, right? And she knows that, so she puts it on him without him knowing, right? No, Aegea is Omega level evil, but she's just very bad.
The way it's
So wait,
written.
Christopher, are you telling me that whole chase? It wasn't like they crashed and she took a moment of opportunity. No, it was planned. They're like, I'm already gonna steal this guy's sword, but like side quest time, we're gonna steal this claw, and
Yeah.
I'm going like the horse carriage guy is also in on it, and we're gonna just.
No, I don't know if Ruocchio is 100% in on it. It may be that she sees an opportunity and seizes it. I would need to look again more closely.
Because how would she know they would crash into that temple and
Richard,
break just the right thing to go get the okay.
I do
question.
think you're probably half right where it's like it is partially her being opportunistic of like, oh, look at this and the relic, but at the very least, she knows it's dangerous and reckless, and Severian, she can see his naivety and he doesn't know what's going on. So I do think it is also, well, we can get him axed off a little earlier if he like dies in the crash, versus having to go through at least that's how I took it, just get to our goals faster without having to go through the whole duel.
Mini request. Could we loop back now to Christopher here to the fish and the mirror and the stuff there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But would you
It's the best.
would you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I can just tell you what that is.
Yes, please
Yeah, I would
do.
love that.
Okay.
Please
So
gift
this
us
is
with this
it's a
stuff.
Stargate, basically. Okay. So these mirrors, right? The idea is that they are attuned in such a way, basically, and I'm going to get this a little wrong, so that the photons hit each other and push one another faster than light, which causes them to get pushed out of the universe completely. And then when the light slows back down, it re-enters the universe in a different place.
That's exactly what I
and-
was thinking too. By the way, yep.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, so actually, this comes up again. Actually later, a couple of times, but once very obviously, so this is one of the ways that star travel is done. And basically, the idea is like they can be attuned in such a way, not only so that they can pull light in, but they can also catch light, right? So the fish are either literally just fish that are projected from another world and captured, right? On one end, you can bring them in as like a curiosity, right? Or they are some sort of alien creature that exists in this sort of like hyperspatial plane that you can bring in, right? And Anir is an alien. So he knows about this stuff more than the inhabitants of regular Earth did.
So yeah, Austin, you were completely right.
Yeah. So that when you were off screen, that's what I was trying to explain to them, but nobody believed me.
What was it actually?
No.
I'd be so impressed.
No,
But
it would be pretty
Christopher,
cool.
I'm
This
curious
is
just
like
for-
it is very
Yeah.
it is very obtuse. Like it's sort of hard to figure out. It's my like favorite method of space travel now. It's so cool. But
how many reads did it take for you
Mirrorfish,
to
yeah.
pick up on that? Was that after
so
2 reads at least, or-
I had a little bit of a cheat in this because there's a really old lost Doctor Who episode. I went through a phase of life where I was obsessed with Doctor Who, and Gene Wolfe was a fan. Where the Daleks arrive in Victorian London by basically these means. And so when he's talking about this, I was thinking of it's the episode Victoria was introduced, and this is a Patrick Troughton episode. I can't remember. It's not Power of the Daleks. All the Dalek episodes have the same title, right? It's something of the Daleks. I can't remember. It might be Time of the Daleks. I don't recall. We don't have all of it anymore because the BBC lost the film. But I was enough of a fan that I was very interested in these missing episodes. And I thought that was so neat. So I was like, wait a second, because there's an old Gene Wolfe quote where he said something like the state of science fiction television can be best said, I'm paraphrasing, in that sometimes Doctor Who is aired, sometimes Star Trek is not. No,
That's actually really
no, which I think is funny. But it was Patrick episode. It was introducing Tomb of the Cybermen. It's like it would have been a couple serials before that one. That's a very famous episode.
Okay, which doctor was it? You broke
I
up there
digress.
for a second, Christopher.
The second one.
The second one. Okay.
The second doctor.
Okay.
Patrick Troughton.
Oh,
I didn't like 100%. I didn't figure out the fish part, but I was like, hold on. And then again later, this comes back in a couple of ways that that like makes it more obvious. In the same way, it's this is the usual Gene Wolfe move. It's like something weird will happen, and he'll tell you what it is in an unrelated scene. 5 chapters later. So this gets a little bit clearer.
Okay. So
this is important though, because the garden works kind of this way. The garden is hyperspatial, which is why it's bigger than its container, right? Again, there's more Doctor Who here. It's bigger than its container. They probably are on the other side of the world, actually. There are a few structures in the book that work like this. Yeah.
Kind of why the doors only work in a one-way direction of kind of like because all of it is an illusion, but it's a real illusion, kind of like with the mirrors. I don't know. That's kind of, you can only walk in the circle, so you can't go back the way you came. I don't know. That was kind of,
yeah. Well, it's also
my
why
thought with
like an old style airplane shows up and some like African missionaries, right?
Yep.
And a Zulu fellow and all of that stuff.
yeah, that was
because it's
Joe.
it's like a nexus through time where people are popping in and out.
Yeah, that's part of the museum exhibit. It's like the part of the like thing that's so frustrating is that frequently these like very bananas things have very mundane explanations. Like this botanical garden is a botanical garden, and part of the appeal of that is you get to see climates that no longer exist, right? And like they just know that, right? And so it's like, why would we tell? Of course, the botanical garden is like kind of a time machine. Right? Isn't yours?
the thing I noticed from that, the reason why it was off is Severin describes the sky in one of them where it was like the sky was blue or something,
Yep.
which is to him it's like that's incorrect. That doesn't make sense. Skies are never that color or something like that. And I remember like going, oh, okay, we are in like a either alternate dimension, other time, or a holodeck or something not Earth. Like we aren't in the same place anymore because it is a reflection of our timeline sky, like before whatever happened to Earth.
Right. It also contains an example of my favorite Gene Wolfe things where he just asserts something that he feels should be true, right? Where he He's complaining about he apparently has a bone to pick with airplane design, and he's like, there's all this weird aircraft that must have been from before they realized they could just generate lift with the whole airplane, so they put stupid wings on it, right? They couldn't just make the whole thing a wing. And so he's talking about our airplanes, and he's just like, they could be better, you know. And it's just there's a, I can't remember where he writes about this. It might be in Castle Leotter or something, where he like talks about like horses being dumb, right? And he's like, their feet are stupid. Like, we mess with dogs. Like, can we make horses better, right? And that's why all of his horses have claws, right? It's he just has an axe to grind, and I just think it's funny.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
some of the world building is just like Gene Wolfe being a nerd, right?
That's so funny. I have a question coming out of the garden stuff for Christopher and Sam. So the two missionaries are reading from Deuteronomy, but the language has changed drastically. So my question is if this is us seeing people from the time like nowish, right? But like the God is described as like the compassionating instead of God. Yeah, compassionating. Like a lot of the language is taken out. The C's described a little differently. Wouldn't, if we were looking back on this actually happening in our timeline, like wouldn't it have just been like the regular English translation, or is that like? I'm just wondering why it was changed, and he's obviously done this on purpose.
Yeah, you are not reading the regular English translation, though. You're right. You're reading Gene Wolfe's translation of a future text document that he found somehow.
Yeah.
Which weirdly enough, wait for
it.
And we'll get an answer about that.
Okay.
It'll be a long time.
So this is a translation of a translation.
Yeah. So you're seeing it redigested. Yeah.
Okay.
An interesting note about the theological language. God, the word God is almost never used, and when it is used, it's used by pretty low class people. All of the sort of sophisticates will use the increate or some other euphemism.
It's essentially like Trinitarian language, right? There's
yeah,
like three.
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, there's clearly like some kind of future amorphized Christianity, right? There's reference in the House Azure in the brothel scene to a window depicting the temptation, and that might be the temptation of Christ. It might be the temptation of Eve. My guess would be Eve in the situation. But it is a reference to that, right? And so there are trappings of Christianity in the world building, right? But it is mutated, right? And we don't get a very clear look at it, except symbolically, right, in the form of a guy carrying a large cross-shaped instrument of torture over his shoulder as he walks through the post-future. So it's still in there somewhere, right? Gene Wolfe, will very effusively, Severian is not Christ, but he is a Christian figure in some sense, right? But yeah, so it's still our future, kind of, right? There's that twist to it.
That makes sense.
Well, sure it does.
Also, now that Christopher's back, can we talk about the whole sunken bodies room part of the botanical gardens? Of like it's an oat or a pond or lake of formaldehyde, I'm assuming, right? Something of the sort.
It might. I don't know about the chemical composition of the lake itself. There's something about it for sure. It might have to do with the time manipulation properties and not the water precisely. But yes. What about it besides the formaldehyde thing?
It's mainly the characters, because
sorry, I interrupted you too soon. I'm sorry.
You're good. I can't remember, was it Preacher or Jake mentioning about that from the beginning of the book, the body that was taken, one of those characters there was at the lake. I understand that I believe the guy with the man with Baudelaire is the guy that leads him in the book.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So that's that guy. Okay. And I understood that reference. I don't think it has any particular meaning there other than he's there. I don't. What was he searching for? But the other guy, the man searching for his wife. Someone mentioned that the body, like the woman that comes with Severin,
Dorcas.
Dorcas, that may be the woman that the
Old man is
the other
looking
man
for.
is looking for. Yeah.
Is that yeah.
Oh, was that okay?
It
Yeah,
is,
that was my guess. I guessed that, but and it's also interesting because she doesn't remember her past.
Yeah,
there was
she,
also the idea that the old man is looking for the body that was taken from the beginning, but that didn't make sense.
No,
no.
We should like talk about the corpse eating a little bit. We'll get more of that later, but like, there's enough here to like at least say what it is, right? So Vodalus is evil ? Robin Hood, right? He's fighting a revolution against the Empire. And Severian's instinct, and perhaps ours, is great, awesome, right? But maybe not. But because one of the things they do is they exhume bodies and they eat them. He says this. I think he's talking to. I think it's to Rudis and the curator. It might be Ultan. I can't remember. In the library, right? They eat dead people and then experience their memories. And so they're looking for specific dead people for specific memories and information and experiences. It's possible that the water garden is a way of hiding specific bodies and making it like harder for them to want to go. So Hildegrin is there looking for dead people, specific ones. I don't remember if we are told which specific one, but like that is why he's there. So because what they're trying to do, this is so Vodalus is trying to bring back the Empire, right? To bring back the real like galactic empire, right? To like restore humanity to its former glory. And so he's literally digging up the past, right? This is the archetype of the like good old days, like the good old days will come again guy, right? And so he like to do that, he like literally is eating the dead, right? This symbolism like is very self-explanatory, right? And so that's sort of what's going on there, and why the necropolis is guarded, right? And why Hildegrin is there. So there's
okay,
yeah. So that's what.
So
all
that's
that is.
why that's why Hildegrin is there. The first old man that's looking for his dead wife.
He just wants to see her again. He hasn't found her. He's just grieving. He's not just. There's a little bit more there. You're not wrong to be sniffing around. But
okay. And Dorcas is not related, maybe related. Find out later.
Well, he does say that his wife's name is Cass. If you noticed, so I don't feel bad about spelling that one out precisely.
Okay,
but so probably, yeah.
Like that's the end of her name, Dorcas.
Yeah.
My reasoning for thinking it was definite was just like he doesn't immediately introduce her for no reason. Like right after we're introduced to that concept of looking for the. I also thought that maybe there was a hint that there was rumors spreading that people were coming out of this lake not dead, and so he was thinking if he found his wife, then maybe he'd pull her out and she'd be alive because he's heard that maybe has happened. Some that kind of got that vibe as well.
Well,
yeah,
he
people
mentioned
being
before
buried
putting.
Prematurely. Yeah.
Well, he put her in the ground, and he remembered as soon as she went under, like the eyelids opened,
right?
Yeah. And now we can't find her, and so he's going like. He needs to pull her up to go like, was she actually dead or not?
Basically.
And so if this water is a preserving agent or part of the garden, like I'm assuming like it's either she was never dead and she was preserved by the mystical whatever properties, or the claw that saved Severin also restored her. Maybe a bit of both.
You mentioned mystical properties. That brings up a question for me. Is it safe to assume there is no essentially magical stuff, it's all scientific. It seems magical, but it's all scientific.
Yeah, I think that's a safe. But it's like what is science, right? Like there is definitely this sort of blurry line there, right? In terms of what the limitations of human knowing and things are. You know, so
like the mirror fish.
There is I will say this much: you will get a direct answer to this question actually in one of the most banging lines in the entire text. So please hold. Yeah. And I hate to keep doing this. It's the kids. I gotta.
No. Hey, before you go, Christopher, we've been going for 2 hours, so I was just gonna kind of. That was a great place. You say we will get answers in the text later on. We'll be going 2 hours, so I was just gonna kind of wrap things up and thank you so much for your time because I know you know it seems like you're gonna have to dash off again. So I was just gonna thank you before you go because we're probably gonna be wrapping up, brother.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just the 2-year-old.
Oh, please do not apologize.
Not an easy sleeper. She keeps asking for me. No.
Just before you dash off, are you willing to help us with Claw of the Conciliator?
I would love to.
Okay.
I hope I was some help. I know I just like kept.
Oh my God.
There, but,
Yeah, you were a lot of help.
Yeah.
I did not read the same book. That's all I can say.
I gotta change
You
that. I gotta build a
haven't
new
reread
tent.
it yet. Is the thing, right? Like it's very it is very hard to talk about anything, right? This is partly why I like stalled out while I was rambling about saints and things, because I just like, ooh, should I say that? Can't say that, you know? Because this whole book is a piece, right? And like I was saying, everything is so deeply connected with the rest of it that to really say too much, right? This is like a really terribly important thing about Severian and his relationship with women that I really want to say, right? And I can't yet.
Okay.
One more thing I really want to ask, though.
Go ahead, Johanna.
I'm so curious about the Josepha's doll reference because Thecla tells him, if you see the reminder of the time they sewed Josepha's doll, is that going to come up in later books?
It doesn't come up. I'm trying to remember what it means. There's a lot that could be said about Thecla that we haven't said that relates to Vodalis and all of this stuff. So I don't know if it's related to that or not, because there's a lot more about Thecla that that will need to be said. I will double check on that before we come back next time. Let me make a note. Because there's some smarter people I can talk to. Sam mentioned Mark Aramini, who really understands these books.
I love how he looks. He said there's smarter people to talk to, and none of us are here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean me, right? Like John's out here acting like I'm the expert on these books, and I'm just like a fan. They are my favorite science fiction books, but I mean, there are people who like literally wrote the book on these books, right? Like I'm not that guy.
Well, I love that you're here with us tonight because we get to see some of the inspirations for your work, and so much of your work is about how story defines and propels us. So to see a story that has defined and propelled you into your own creative outlet and passion, it's just great to take this journey with you. And I got to thank you again for your time tonight, my friend.
Oh gosh, well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to see all of you. And Sam, I think this is our first time talking Preacher. You too.
Yeah.
It's nice to talk to you both. I know, Sam, we're going to talk like real soon. It's this week. I have it written down somewhere. Right, next week.
Nice.
Right, isn't it?
Yes, next week.
Yeah, there it is.
Very,
Sorry.
very quick,
somewhere.
Christopher. Very quick. Why the jab at Baptists and the Lesser Devil, man? That was mean.
Because my in-laws are.
Oh, okay. Sick.
It was it was for my father-in-law.
It was a shot to the heart for sure when I read that line.
Had to be done. And it was also my cousin growing up. He's a Baptist minister, and we had an argument. I was like 10, and he was like, "No, bro, they drank grape juice." I'm like, "You can't have grape juice without refrigeration. Like, it's not possible." They didn't.
As the resident Baptist, I don't think it was grape juice. So
yeah, no, like it. It's fine if you don't want to drink wine. I barely drink, but like it wasn't grape juice, Kevin. You're watching.
Take that, Kevin.
Kevin's making the Baptists look bad, dude.
Yeah, no. I
All
love
right,
that.
Chris, I know you got a dash, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you so much, Christopher.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Christopher.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah, sorry. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Our best to the family and Jenna.
You bet. Bye.
So I just want to take a couple minutes to thank everybody else. These are some of the funnest books to talk about, I think, because when you read it, you feel like, oh my gosh, there is so much here. And then you start talking about it, and it's like, there's so much I didn't even see was here. And that's what makes these conversations so fun. And I want to thank each and every one of you, Preacher for Preacher Reads, Jake from Nerd Level Rising, Sam from iSamwise, Johanna, the assassin elf herself from Johanna Reads, Richard and Austin from Two to Ramble, and Dr. Chase, who had to ramble off a little bit early from the Best of Fantasy. We're going to, if they're not down there already, we're going to add each and every one of these amazing
They are
channels.
down there. Subscribe to everybody. They're in the
If
description.
you haven't checked them out yet, they do amazing work here on BookTube, insightful and fun work. Check them all out. And each and every one of you guys, thanks so much for taking this journey and hanging out with me and having a good time with me tonight. And everyone in the chat, thank you so much. And everyone that comes up after that watches this, hit us up in comments and let us know if you knew he was a robot.
What else did we miss?
We're gonna get some essays in the comment section.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Well, John, Jacob, thank you very much for hosting
Yeah.
this. This was the best way to actually consume this book.
Yeah,
100%.
I am so happy we didn't read this book and just do our standard review. That would have been
Me too.
an awful video. Oh, just terrible. I'm
Man,
so glad we did this.
I'm kind of new to book clubs because I don't read that often, and this is like the only book I've ever read that I got to the final page and felt like I didn't even read the book. And to be here and not feel alone was so what I needed. So thanks, everybody.
Well, everyone in the chat and that comes after, we are going to continue. We are going to do Claw the Conciliator. We'll find out who's going to host, and we'll find out a time, and we'll make sure everyone gets the information and plenty of time to join us again. So keep on. If you've read it before and it's your favorite, if you haven't tried it yet, keep on reading with us, and we'll see you next time. Is there anyone else that has anything else to say before we sign off?
No, thank you, John.
Buckle up.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks
thank
a ton. This is awesome.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
everybody.